Do you struggle giving critical feedback to people on your team? I used to chicken out all the time until I learned this awesome formula that I'm gonna show you right now in this video. It is too cold out here, let's get out of here. How do I share critical feedback with my employees, with people on my team? Maybe you're asking yourself that question right now. That's why you're here at this video. You got a tough conversation coming up. This is something that I definitely struggled with as a young leader. I was awful at it. And this technique that I'm gonna share with you right here in this video is something that helped me get significantly better at it. You know, because the bottom line is, if you're not having these tough conversations because you're not comfortable with it and you're avoiding it, that can be cruel. Good leaders, great leaders, are ones who have the courage to bring this stuff up. And if they do it well in an artful manner, it's very well received by the person that they're trying to help. My formula is a 3-step process. And the first step is you must take detailed, specific notes. So whatever behavior you have an issue with, you have to sit back for a couple weeks and observe the person and then jot down and take detailed notes of exactly what happens and when. Write down the date, the time, the location, who was present, exactly what was said. Write down the exact quote of what the person said, or maybe it's a snippet from an email. You need facts, not opinions, so that you're prepared when it comes time for the conversation, and we'll get to that in the future steps. Think about yourself. Have you ever been in an argument where you say to the person, well, you're always doing X, Y, Z, and they say, name one time I did that. And you're like, shoot, I can't come up with anything in the moment. Then 2 days later, you're in the shower, you're like, oh, I should have said this, this, and this. You need to take the time, resist the urge to present the issue or problem to the person right away. Take a week or two or however long it takes, write down the specific notes, because it's cruel to them if you come to them with opinions and generalities. You need to give them specific examples of what they've done that's causing you to feel a certain way. So that's step 1, is to take detailed, specific notes. Step 2 is to create a document and print it out. Actually, print out 2 copies. You're gonna actually put in all of those detailed notes you took in step 1, you're gonna put them into this document along with some other stuff, and you're gonna print out 2 copies. And there's several great advantages of having a printed out document. First and foremost, if you have the printout and you have all of the things listed, it prevents you from chickening out, right? Early on, when I was a young leader and I would sit down and I'd have a tough conversation, if the person seemed upset or it started to get emotional and I started getting uncomfortable, I would chicken out. I wouldn't list all of the things. But if I have a printout and I start the conversation by sliding the copy over to them and I have a copy, well, then I can't chicken out. Second, it shows them that this is important to me and I've been paying attention enough to create this document. Third, it helps structure the conversation. And that's another key thing. Early on, I would do this and I didn't have a document and I would start to feel uncomfortable. I'd want to break the tension. I'd start talking about other things. I'd do anything to make us both feel a little bit more comfortable. And fourth, and this is probably the most important reason I like to create a document, is it gives them a takeaway so that, because in the moment, right, when I'm presenting this maybe difficult to hear feedback, maybe they're starting to get emotional, maybe they're not able to process it all, maybe they might be thinking, did I say that? And all of these things are going through their head. But if they have a document, they can now take it away and they can go back to their desk, they can think about it, the next day they can look at it. A lot of people go to maybe their spouse or their best friend or a coworker and start to say, well, this is what happened, and they get their feedback. I think if there's a document with specifics in there, it just helps facilitate that conversation and helps avoid miscommunication and somebody interpreting something in a crazy way. So that's step 2, is to create a document and print out 2 copies. And the third step is to meet with them in person and actually have this conversation. And so what I like to do is at the start of that conversation, I like to call them in, I give them a copy of the document, and then we review all of the items. We look at them, they're all fact-based, right? I took the time to write down specifics that are really inarguable. There are no opinions in there, those are just facts. When I get done presenting those, at that point, I present my feeling. When you did X, Y, Z, it made me feel this way. The reason I'm stating my feelings is because my feelings are facts. It is a fact that I feel this. I could be wrong, I could misinterpret it, but no one could argue, you did this and it made me feel this way. Now, at this point, they're gonna be able to respond, and that's why this is a conversation. This is a dialogue. This is not a monologue, this is a dialogue. That's why this must be done in person, preferably physically in person. If the person's remote and across the country or the world, sometimes you have to do it on a Zoom. but you got to get face to face so that you can have a conversation and go back and forth. So that is the third step, is to meet with them and present the document and talk about the feelings. Now we're gonna walk through an example so you can see all 3 steps in action. Okay, in our example here, let's say we have a guy on our team named Bob. He's causing some trouble and some dissension on the team, maybe the way he treats his teammates, maybe some of the things he says to clients, they're not really sitting well with me or the rest of the people in the team. This is exactly how this conversation would go. So let's say I've already taken the time to document this and create the actual printout, right? I would sit Bob down, I'd start off like this. Bob, thanks for taking the time to meet with me today. Listen, man, I just wanted to share some things that I've been thinking about, some frustrations that I've had, and I want to get them out in the open here today, right? And that's why I want to have this conversation. I think whenever there's something inside me that's like frustrating me or bothering me about a relationship, I think it's unfair if I just harbor that inside and I don't share it with the other person, right? It wouldn't be fair to you if I just kept this inside and got more frustrated. And so I want to talk about that a little bit here, and then we can have a conversation about it, and hopefully we can get past this. But no matter what, I hope that you appreciate, whether you disagree with me or not, you might think I'm absolutely crazy, Bob, but hopefully you'll appreciate that I'm trying to do this man-to-man, in person, and really present this to you and be transparent, and we can try to work through this. So at this point in the conversation, this is when I would actually present Bob with the document, with a copy, and I'd have another copy. And I'd say, Bob, let's talk about a couple things. I have 2 different situations that happened over the past week. On Monday, when we were all in the conference room and Brian was struggling with the inventory system, you said to him, just move out of the way and I'll do it. And then on Wednesday, that was the 4th, when we were on site at Acme Corp, Mike Davidson, he didn't have the purchase order filled out. And yeah, that was annoying to me. It was annoying to you, right? But when he handed you the improperly filled out purchase order, you snatched it out of his hand and you said, well, I guess I'm working overtime today. So Bob, when I hear you say things like this, these types of statements make me feel uncomfortable. When you told Brian the other day, move out of the way and I'll do it, it makes me feel like maybe you're not thinking about Brian's feelings or your teammates' feelings. And I thought Brian actually felt really uncomfortable. He felt embarrassed after that. And then, on Wednesday, like we said, when Mike, who is, by the way, he's a key player at our largest client, when you snatched the purchase order from him and said, well, I guess I'm working overtime today, that makes him feel uncomfortable. Right? He knows he messed up. You could tell in that conversation that he felt bad about it. And now you're kind of making him feel worse about it, or at least that's the way I felt he perceived that. Maybe I'm wrong. In serving others, that's one of our core values, Bob. And so when you do things like that, it makes me feel like maybe you're not fully in line with that core value that's so precious to us. So I just shared a bunch. I did a lot of talking. So I have a few questions. I want to pass it to you. Does this resonate at all? Do you see why I might feel this way? And what thoughts do you have? I'd kind of like to turn the floor over to you, Bob. And so at this point, right, Bob's going to talk, and now the conversation's going. Right? He can't argue with the facts. I wrote down the facts exactly as they are. He did say that to Brian. Now, sometimes people say, well, I didn't say that. Well, now what are we, in the court of law? I got to go get Brian and the team and say, well, he actually did say that, right? Every single time I've ever used this technique, the person has accepted the facts, especially when you're so meticulous and you write down word for word and you write down a timestamp and the location. They can kind of tell, like, okay, I did this, especially if you have an actual email of their own words. But at this point, it's conversational. And so I said some facts and I said how they make me feel. He or whoever you're speaking to, they might feel, well, maybe you're overreacting. And that's their right, and we can have a conversation about that. But either way, I'm putting these out in a respectful manner. I never once accused Bob of being a jerk. I never said Bob, was an a-hole. I didn't accuse him of anything. He did these 2 things, and it made me feel a certain way, and now let's talk about it. So let me wrap it up like this. This formula has been hugely impactful in my own life, in my own career. I just believe that the best teams, the most effective teams, the healthiest teams are ones that are based on open and honest communication, where there's a dialogue, where there's feedback, where people aren't harboring frustrations or things that they don't like about somebody and they don't put it out into the open. And so if you believe that too, maybe you can get some value out of this technique. If you have any questions, please reach out to me directly or leave some comments in the comments section below. Hopefully you can use this and make these conversations a part of your leadership strategy. Do something great today.